Nedarim Daf continues the Gemara's discussion of times and how they are limited, what's included in each unit of time. So the Gemara's next discussion is if somebody says yovel, somebody answers a yovel on him. So does that include the yovel year or not? Now, Ron explains he's saying this yovel, that I'm going to be asked to, let's say, drink wine for this yovel. So does that include the yovel year, or is the yovel year not included in a yovel? What does the yovel mean? Is the yovel part of the next set of years? So the Gemara says it should be dependent on the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanon, whether the yovel year was actually the first year of the next 49-year cycle, or was it outside the 49-year cycle? Meaning as follows: according to the Chachamim, you count 49 years. The 49th year is Shemitah. The next year is Yovel. A year after that is year one of the next Shemitah cycle. According to Yehuda, the Shemitah year is itself year one of the next Shemitah cycle. There is no year 50. So the Chachamim bring a raya from the pasuk that says, so you see it's called year number 50. That means that you count year 50, and then the year after that is year one. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. So the Gemara says they asked on Rabbi Yehuda, according to you, how do you have 6 years you should do your work? It says Sheish Shanim Tizrach Sadecha. You should be able to work for 6 years. According to you, that the Shemitah year is year one of the next Shemitah cycle, so you only have 5 years where you get to work during that 7-year period, because year one is Yovel, which has the halachas of Shemitah, and year 7 is Shemitah, so you only have 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda says, well, you have a problem also, and that's that the Torah says that the 6th year will produce for 3 years worth, for year 6, 7, and 8. But according to you, when there's Yovel, it has to produce for year 6, 7, 8, and 9, because 7 and 8, both years you can't work. So obviously you'll have to say that when it says it'll produce for 3 years, it's talking about the other years, not the cycle in which Yovel falls. So I'll say the same thing for this. It's talking about the other years, not the one in which Yovel falls. The Gemara now refers to the next part of our last Mishnah, where it's if someone says ad Pnei Pesach, we weren't sure what that meant. Did that mean until Pesach begins or until just before Pesach ends? Did it mean as long as there's any amount of time that there's still Pesach after it? So we've seen in the Mishnah that Rabbi Meir says that it's until Pesach begins, and Rabbi Yossi says it's until Pesach ends. So the Gemara says that the machlokes is based on, does a person put himself in a suffix situation? Does he make a neder which goes into Pesach, and that entire Pesach time is a suffix? What he meant, does he put himself into a suffix, or he keeps himself out of suffix, and therefore he meant until Pesach begins? So it implies that Rabbi Meir holds that a person does not put himself into a suffix, and Rabbi Yossi holds a person will put himself into a suffix. The Gemara says, but you see that those opinions are opposite. You see, in the case of someone who says that he has 2 sets of daughters, 2 each from 2 different wives, 2 older and 2 younger, and he says, I was mekadesh my biti hagdoila, my older daughter. And we don't know what that means. Does that mean the older one of the older set? Does that mean the older one of the younger set? Or it could even mean the younger one of the older set. The only one that it for sure doesn't mean is the younger one of the younger set. So how do we understand this? So Rabbi Meir says a person would put himself into suffix and therefore could refer to any of those 3. The only one that we know for sure it did not refer to is the younger of the youngest. She's the only one who's mutter. Over there, Rabbi Yossi holds the other way. He says no, a person doesn't put himself into a suffix, and therefore the only one he could have possibly meant is the older of the oldest, which is for sure an older of an older. He doesn't refer to himself in a suffix way. So that's the opposite of what we said in our Mishnah. So the Mishnah says you have to switch that opinion and switch the shittas there. Where it says Rabbi Chanina bar Avdimi says that, and then brings the Brisa to prove it, where you have a quote referring to the case of where someone says the Isser until Pnei Pesach. So the Brisa says that the rule is anything which is set up to go to a specific time. Rabbi Meir says it's until the time ends, and therefore you do put yourself in the case of suffix. And Rabbi Yossi says you don't put yourself in the case of suffix, and it's until the time begins. All right, now we begin to our next Mishnah. The next Mishnah discusses if somebody makes it until a specific season. Somebody makes a neder until Katzir. Katzir is the harvesting of the wheat, or until Vatzir, that's the harvesting of the grapes, or until Ad Hamasik, that's the harvesting of olives, until any of those seasons. So if he says until the season, so it's only also when the season begins. Now, the Mishnah says this is the rule. Anything which has a fixed time, and he says until that time, then it's usher until that time begins. Once the time begins, then it's not usher anymore. Now, if he says achi hey until it'll be that time, then the isser continues all the way until the time ends. Now, anything, however, says that Mishnah does not have a fixed time, and these are our cases here, such as harvest seasons. Harvest seasons could depend on who you are and what type of crop you have. So those things, it doesn't matter whether you say until the time or until the time exists. Either way, it's usher until the time begins. As an example, the Mishnah says if somebody says until kayetz, which is until the harvesting of the figs, so then the iser, it makes no difference if he says until kayetz or until it'll be kayetz. Either way, it's until the people start bringing in the baskets, until they start with the baskets. That is when the Isser, that is when the Neder ends. If he says until the Kayetz ends, so then it's until it's actually over. And that is considered to be when people fold up their knives and put them away. Those are the knives that people use to cut off the edges of the cakes of figs that they make. Now, figs are usually picked up by hand, and therefore it can't be that it's made with a kli at any sort. Right. Now the Gemara discusses, when we talked about the basket, when people bring out the baskets, is that referring to baskets to pick figs or baskets to pick grapes? Because the term kayetz that was used, which we said that if he says kayetz, so kayetz just means picking by hand. So figs are definitely called kayetz. The question is, are grapes also called kayetz? And therefore, the baskets for picking grapes, if they bring out the baskets to pick the grapes, does that count as if the season of kayetz began, or kayetz can only refer to picking figs? So the Gemara first brings a brayso that says it's only figs and not grapes. Then the Gemara brings a brayso that says somebody who makes a neder against peiros kayetz, it's only usher on figs according to Tanna Kama. Shimon ben Gamliel says no, grapes are also called kayetz. Why are figs called kayetz? What is the reasoning of the Tanna Kama? Because you pick them by hand. So Rav Shimon the Tanna Kama holds grapes aren't picked by hand. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, however, says grapes are picked by hand because if they get dried out and they snap quickly, then you pick the grapes by hand as well.